Hello, in this short video, I'm going to demonstrate how we can create a new board with cards using the Cardsmith CSV import. After we create a new board with cards, I'll show you how to modify the cards or add cards to an existing Cardsmith board. Okay, so to get started, we've got a very simple CSV. I'm using Excel here, and essentially we've got the first 5 fields here or columns in the spreadsheet are mandatory. So these 5, card ID, card title, column, row, and color, those column headers must exist in your CSV. After those first 5, you can have additional columns that would represent fields, and the top row here is going to represent the field label that will be created on that card in Cardsmith. And then the values will, of course, be the text that will be in those fields. Currently, we support text fields being added using the CSV import. Okay, this card ID is a unique identifier should we want one. You could leave these values blank, and that would just indicate there is no other system that we're trying to keep track of. But if you wanted to, say, keep or import cards into Cardsmith that came from another system, and that system has a unique identifier, you might want to keep that here in this card ID column, and that's going to allow us to make changes to these cards down the road, should we want to do that. In this particular example, I've got these cards in Jira, and I also want the card ID or the Jira ID to show as a field in the card itself. And so I've duplicated the Jira ID and the card ID. So I couldn't name this card ID because one of the rules is that each of the columns here in your spreadsheet needs to be unique. So you can't reuse column names. But I'm going to go ahead and create a custom field in column F of Jira ID, and then I just cut and paste the card ID into that column. The reason I need both of these is this Jira ID is going to show up as a field, and the card ID actually gets hidden in the Cardsmith board. It's kind of used as an internal unique identifier. All right, so once I have this how I like it, I would then save this as comma separated value, and I'm just going to call that initial board. So if I've got multiple sheets, I just tell it that I want that first one. And then what I'm going to do is pop over to Cardsmith and go to my main menu and say import from CSV. Now you see here there's instructions, and there's a link to a sample CSV file that'll get you set up with those initial 5 fields. You might have noticed that one of the mandatory fields is color. I'll show you how to identify the color choices, because what you'll need to do is, if you want color on your cards, you'll need to specifically name them according to the Cardsmith color names. I'll show you that in a bit. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and choose the file, initial board, and I will import that board. So you can see it's created a new board for me. I could come in here and just change this to Jira Sprints or something like that. So what happened was it built the grid for me because I had rows and columns. And yeah, it looks like those were in the right order. Depending on your data, you may have to reorder. Like let's say, for example, programming came before design. I could just simply reorder those columns. And let's see if it worked. Okay, so it looks like there we've got that, and here's a story description, my Jira ID, and my story points. But by the way, now that we have a grid, we could actually sum up our story points using grid totals here. I'm not going to go there now. All right, so let's do the next step. The next step is I'm going to want to add a new card. So you can see here in my initial board, I had 4 cards. Now I've got 5. And let's make a change to one of these as well. Let's go ahead and call this initial story number 1, changed its name. or something like that, just so we can see that this actually works. And then again, we'll save this as a CSV. And this time, rather than going back to my home board and doing the import CSV, I'm going to have the board that I want to modify open, and I use the import cards from a CSV file. This actually is import or modify, or both. Choose this, import the board. It's going to ask you what you should do if you want to update cards or ignore cards. And I actually do want to update those cards. So I'm going to say update the matching card, and I'm sure. And you can see here what happened is it added a new story and it updated our card that was already there. All right, so next what I want to show you is how you would find the colors for the cards. And to see our color names, you can click on the color on the card menu, and then you see these are the colors that we currently offer. And if you hover your mouse, it should tell you the color names. So you can see in this board we have berry and we're using school bus, but if you wanted to use the other colors, you can find those names here. Okay, now let's imagine that we did some story planning, some story mapping, some sprint planning, whatever we were doing, and we added some additional stories. So let's say we add story number 10, and we're going to go ahead and say that that's down here in the design phase, and we could add fields to that as well. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you another trick. Let's not do this. Let's go ahead and make our card into a default card. And that way, when we add a new card, story number 10, you see that it would have those fields, and then I can add these in. And let's say this is TBD, and that's going to tell Jira something. So what I'm showing you here is that we can go the other way. If we got these cards from another system, maybe we added some cards, maybe we made some changes to where the cards live in the process. For example, if this was like sprint number 1, sprint number 2, I could do that. And if I want to put this data back into my other system, my other project management system, in this case Jira, I would then export this grid as a CSV. And you can see if I open this up, bring that over here, now it's got the card ID, which coincidentally is also the Jira ID, although it doesn't look like the Jira ID came through on everything. But this is the idea, is that these cards could then be populated back into the associated system. Thank you, and I think that's all. Let us know if you have any questions.